You know his words will get you farther than the film will ever go. Give him a moment of your time, he'll tell you what's wrong with the show. He knows what's good, what's bad, what's really bad. His face is just a sign. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
This was one of the first films that I ever put on my list, but it had been so long since I had seen this that I honestly forgot what I didn't like about it. So I thought, well, maybe that was just how I felt at the time. Maybe I just need to sit down with a fresh pair of eyes and see if this is even worth reviewing at all. Unfortunately, I actually took myself up on my own advice and watched this again. If there was ever a film deserving of a Confused Matthew review, it's this. This film has all the problems of Spider-Man 3 and Iron Man 2. There are some brain-dead moments in here that could rival either one, and it easily matches both of them in out-of-character moments and pacing issues. But it has one extra problem that in many ways makes it worse than those two other sequels. X-Men 3 actually sets up a lot of plot points that are intended to have emotional weight, but it never takes the least bit of time to let the characters feel anything. And that's terrible, because not only do a lot of moral and ethical questions hit you left and right in this film, but it also features the deaths of a great many principal characters, and all these issues are immediately brushed aside after they are raised. This film just feels like it's trying to get itself over with. It's so busy moving on to the next scene that it's never given a chance to breathe. We open with two flashbacks, not one, but two. The first shows us Charles Xavier and Magneto meeting Jean for the first time, and it's not what you would expect. This girl is out of control and mega powerful, but then we get a second flashback to some kid mutilating himself in a bathroom. Well, considering they actually opened the film with this kid, I'm sure he's going to be really important to this film. After this, it's back to the present with the X-Men kicking some ass in what looks to be a post-apocalyptic future. But it's just a trick. They were all in a holodeck of sorts. Similar to the opening of Star Trek II, but without anything that made that opening work. The opening of Wrath of Khan surprised you by killing our friends before their time. This was just a cheap trick. But it seems that human-mutant relations have improved somewhat since the last film. A kind of half-assed peace was made in X-Men 2, and as a result, a big blue ball of fluff can now serve in the Senate without fear of persecution. He's a bit distressed, however, as someone, somewhere, actually devised a one-size-fits-all mutant reversing thingy. They're calling it a cure, which, needless to say, gets varied reactions from all sides. There are the scared-out-of-their-mind humans who see this as a godsend, and then there are the mutants like Magneto who see it as yet another way of committing genocide. Very seldom, unfortunately, do we see what could have been the most meaningful and important part of this film. The mutants who actually want this cure, who don't want to live this way anymore. Oh, sure, this is brought up a few times, but the issue is more acted out than it is explored. We see protests here and there, and we are told that mutants are lining up around the block to get this thing, but we never get to the heart of this issue. Even when Rogue decides that she wants this cure, which we'll get into later, it's never really a part of the story in any way other than just another threat for the X-Men to thwart. What a waste, because the mutant cure was a good idea, it really was. Ultimately, the first hour of the film spends a lot of time on exposition over this cure, but never really tackles it the way it should be. Big Blue is trying to straighten this whole issue out in the Senate, but in the meantime, this thing is already being administered voluntarily for the time being. So as this is going on, Scott, aka Cyclops, has been hearing some freaky shit which sounds like Jean's voice. Jean Grey is a character that got crushed under a big wall of water in the last film, but Scott just can't shake the voices, so he wanders off instinctively to the place where she died and gets the surprise of his life. Jean is alive. She gives him a big hug, and then something happens off-screen where the scene is abandoned until our heroes go to check things out. And this brings us to big issue number 1 with this film. Every character death in the film is handled atrociously. That's right, I know you wouldn't believe me if I told you, but Scott's dead. I mean really dead, not gonna be brought back dead. We are never going to see him again in this franchise. They took one of the actual main characters, who has been with the series since the beginning, and killed him off screen. You know, Cyclops wasn't even a character that I liked very much, but you know what? His character was important, and he deserved better than this. Now, the thing about the X-Men franchise in particular is that it has a lot of characters. The main cast alone, including the reoccurring villains, totals 8 primary characters, with new characters being introduced in every film. I understand that you can't use every character to their fullest every time you do one of these. There are just too many of them. And you know, honestly, it doesn't even bother me that they kill a lot of these characters. My problem is that, once again, the complete lack of feeling that should go along with the deaths of any of these characters. Rather than make these characters' deaths meaningful, the film just flicks them off like so much garbage. Worse still is that no one will ever feel the least bit bad about Scott's death. They're all too busy getting on with the plot. Both Jean and Wolverine will mention that this happened, but no one will ever grieve for him, no one will ever have any words for him, no one will ever care. Least of all the audience. Now, James Marsden, who plays Cyclops, was juggling a full schedule with this and Superman Returns, so he couldn't fully commit to the role, and you know what? I get that. But what the hell did they even bother writing him in for if they were just gonna chuck his character's body on the side of the freaking road like so much garbage? They could just as easily have written him out and said, you know what, Scott took Jean's death so hard that he just took off. Sure, he wouldn't have been able to appear in the final film, and that would have been kind of a shame, but it's a lot better than just throwing his character away like this. Oh, but trust me, this isn't even the worst death in the film. Not by far. Jean gets picked up and taken back to X-Men headquarters. I know it's not really called that, I'm just being sarcastic. So meanwhile, the voluntary cure is about to be used on a kid, but it turns out not to be as voluntary as was said, because he really doesn't want to go through with this. Oh, look at that, it's the kid we saw in the opening. Wow. Man, he's got wings? Jeez. Who is he? So anyway, back at X-Men headquarters, Xavier checks Jean over to see what's up. And honestly, this part and what comes of it doesn't even make me mad. It doesn't even make me frustrated. It just kills me with regret, because this is the part that really could have turned this whole thing around and made this movie great. It turns out that this out-of-control kid we saw in the opening was too out of control for even Xavier to handle. So rather than even trying to handle it, he went into her mind and subdued that aspect of Jean Grey, the part that cannot be controlled, which calls itself the Phoenix. He imprisoned the Phoenix in a bunch of mental cages, and Jean wasn't even aware of this until the moment before she died. In that moment, the Phoenix got free and saved her. But the bottom line is that Professor Xavier did something terrible for what he believed to be the greater good. This is more along the lines of something Magneto would do, but it's the Professor that took this action. This is huge. The Professor has virtually lobotomized Jean her whole life. There are several ethical questions that smack you in the face here. I mean, what's the right thing to do? On the one hand, without the Professor's intervention, Jean may grow so out of control and powerful that the only solution would be to kill her before she kills many. But on the other hand, this is a clear violation of her human rights. Logan and Charles go back and forth on the issue, Charles arguing that the beast could not be defeated, and the only choice left was to subdue it. Logan counters by arguing that sometimes when you cage a beast, it just makes it madder. This is a tremendous moral dilemma that the audience now has to weigh in their minds, and it's a dilemma that the characters should be wrestling with, because both Xavier and Logan make good points. Did Xavier do the right thing, or did he not give Jean enough of a chance to try and face and control this on her own? Sadly, these are questions that will never be asked, and this part of the film, which could have been the heart and soul of the film, goes absolutely nowhere. And we will see to what extent in the coming parts. We catch up with Magneto, who has been rallying any and all mutants to his cause against the humans and their cure. He has now come to rescue Mystique from her captivity, who, for those of you who don't know, is Magneto's most loyal right-hand person. He rescues her with a mere flick of his wrist and finds a few other mutants here as well. Juggernaut, who I understand is a fan favorite, and a guy who can make a bunch of copies of himself. God, they're really running out of ideas for these guys. He immediately identifies these two mutants as people that he can use for his cause, so he recruits them. Mystique explains that the mutant cure is actually coming not from a natural source, but from a kid. His mutant power is the involuntary ability to undo all other mutant powers. Of course, you would think that a power to nullify powers would cancel itself out, but whatever. Now, this probably isn't technically the worst part of the film, but it's the part that bothers me the most on a personal level. What comes next could be taught in a class entitled How to Fuck Up a Good Character 101. All the mutants go over a few plans when suddenly the guard fires the mutant cure at Magneto, but Mystique, being the loyal friend and companion that she is, dives in front of it. But rather than saying what would come naturally to Magneto, like, "Oh my god, we have to help her now," Magneto says this.
I'm sorry, my dear. You're not one of us anymore.
She took a bullet for him. But rather than realize that this is something artificial that has happened to her against her will, rather than putting forth the slightest effort to try and find out if this is reversible or not, he just writes her off. This one small act completely ruins this character. Now, I know that there are those out there who would argue that this actually fits the character like a glove. By disowning someone closest to him simply because they're human, it shows how dead set against humanity Magneto really is. To the people who would argue this case, I completely beg to differ. Magneto is not that narrow. Think about this. Charles Xavier has fought against Magneto's cause, alongside the humans that do so, for years. From Magneto's point of view, Charles is a collaborator. That's worse than just being human. You're siding against your own kind. But he still loves and respects Charles because he knows him so well. And that's what someone who actively fights against him. Mystique has never faltered from Magneto's cause, never left his side, and she always had his back. But look at what just happened here back to back. Magneto finds a few mutants and says, "Well, I don't know either of you in the slightest, but you've got some nifty mutant powers that could help me out, so bam, you're in." But when Mystique is turned human, against her will I might add, he reacts by saying, "Well, you've been my loyal, lifelong friend for as far as I can remember, and I know you better than anyone, but you're a human now, so bam, you're out." It may seem like I'm picking on a really small thing here, but it's really not. Try to understand what this does to the core of Magneto's character. Mystique is now a victim of the very evil he's trying to stop. If he doesn't have any sympathy and compassion for her, then what is he doing this for? That is why this action ruins the character. It tells us that Magneto is just a bigot. He doesn't really care about the mutants. He just hates humans. That is a fucking disgrace to this character. Magneto has his cause, sure, but he's not just going to automatically side with any mutant just because they're mutants, and he's not going to turn his back on a loyal friend just because they've been made human. Even at this franchise's worst, Magneto was a layered and dimensional character, but thanks to this idiocy, he has now been transformed into just another bad guy that shoots at you. Great. So back at X-Men headquarters, Jean wakes up and almost immediately begins seducing Logan. There are brief moments where Jean is in control, but the Phoenix soon takes over and hightails it out of there, forcing the X-Men to go looking for her. They track her to her childhood home, and it turns out that Magneto has done the same thing. Now, both Xavier and Magneto are here for the same reason. They both want to bring this person back with them. The difference is that Charles wants Jean, whereas Magneto wants the Phoenix in order to aid him in his fight against the humans and their cure. They go back and forth with her, confusing the hell out of her until Charles brings up Scott, and then Jean has had enough. The Phoenix finally comes through and lashes out. Now, Charles says something to her in this scene, which I won't go into until the final part of this review, but I just want to make a note of it. I will bring this up later on. Everything gets trashed, Charles gets lifted up in the air until finally, Charles is dead. The next day, all the teachers and kids at the school gather around to have a sad memorial for him. We get the works here. Shots of Xavier's empty chair, somber music playing in the background, and every character grieving over this. There's just one teensy problem with this whole thing. The movie is only half over! This death, the most important death in the entire film, has absolutely no opportunity to resonate with the audience. We still have the rest of the film to get through and resolve, and by the time that's over, the moment has well passed. Half the audience is wondering if Charles was actually killed or if they're going to bring him back, and the other half is just having to get on with the rest of the film. At what point are we given a chance to feel anything about this? This is why you save the important deaths for the end of a film. You can't do something like this in the middle. When you end the film with an important death, that's the note we are left with. The grief and sorrow is fresh in our minds. Xavier is probably the most important character in the franchise, and his death is just ruined by the fact that it comes too soon. By the time the rest of the film plays out, we have already forgotten about it. This could not have been handled worse, but make no mistake, we're not done with things being made worse. So now that Xavier's dead, everyone decides what should be done with the school. Oh, hey look, it's that kid with the wings again. Who is he? So anyway, immediately after Xavier's death, we then cut to two kids ice skating, because that's naturally what should come next after the death of the most important X-Men character ever. Two kids ice skating. The ice dude and the chick who can walk through walls are getting a little close here, and this makes Rogue really insecure as she and Ice Dude are in a relationship. See, Rogue can't touch anyone. If she does, she'll absorb all their abilities and kill them. So after seeing these two interacting, she decides to go get the cure. The problem is, that's all that happens. Just going and getting the cure. Logan tells her that she can do whatever she wants, and that's it. She doesn't talk to her boyfriend about this. She doesn't talk to the girl who's making her feel insecure about this. She just hops on a bus and gets the cure. Literally, that's all Rogue is going to do in this film. The issue is never explored in any way. She just does it. And that was the closest this movie will ever get to the cure being anything but a threat to the mutants who now have to stop it. Now, it's just that. So over at Magneto's anti-mutant camp, we see that he has won the tug-of-war with Jean, and now has the Phoenix on his side. The most powerful, dangerous, out-of-control mutant in the history of mutants, now on the side of those who will take down the humans. And what does she do? She stands around, doing nothing but stare into space. Wow, how out of control and powerful. I'm really impressed here. Remember all that talk about the moral consequences of caging the Phoenix and Jean battling for control over it? Where did that all go? Jean's just standing around waiting for something to happen, and no one's talking about this. Wolverine makes an attempt to get her back, but never is there any discussion of helping Jean overcome the Phoenix, or trying to make amends for what the Professor did to her, or trying a different way to do this. Hell, even if someone had said, okay, I stand corrected, the Professor was right, we do need to try and put this thing in a cage, that would at least have been something, but no, nothing. The X-Men just try to get her back, and Jean just stands there for the rest of the film. Magneto and his forces get to Alcatraz where the kid is being held, and he is met with opposition. But instead of just landing the Golden Gate Bridge on them, Magneto decides to conduct this battle in the most ass way possible. I'm not kidding. Once Magneto begins the fight, he turns into a goddamn retard. Even if it was just Magneto versus these people, he alone would have the clear advantage here. But as soon as the battle begins, he starts using Zap Brannigan logic. You see, the guns the humans are using have a preset kill limit. Realizing their weakness, he sends wave after wave of his own men at them till they reach their limit and shut down. Where the hell is Jean? Didn't you risk life and limb to recruit her for this? Where is she? Oh, that's right. Jean's just standing around, staring into space. Oh, and just to let you all know, Jean has the power to do this. You know, I've been pretty calm and understanding up to this point, but this part of the film pisses me off. It's so retarded. Magneto has brought with him a way to eliminate all of his enemies in an instant, without one single mutant on his side being killed or even getting hurt. But instead, he sends them all in first, before resorting to the big guns. Magneto, don't you think you should tell Jean to just decimate all the humans so you don't have to waste any of your men?
In chess, the pawns go first.
This isn't chess. It's a war. You have a nuke. Just use the nuke. And if you weren't going to use Jean, then what did you bother recruiting her for? I have met tens of people who actually try to defend this movie, and they've all argued that Jean is just too out of control simply to command this way. My response to that is, yeah, so what? That doesn't make this any less bullshit. Here's scenario number 1. Oh, it was my plan all along to use Jean to bring these people down. So why didn't you just do it? Shut up. Scenario number 2. Oh, I was never going to use Jean to bring these people down. She's way too unstable. So what did you bring her for? Shut up. This movie just fucks you in the ass either way. So as the battle is going on, one of the main architects of the whole cure business is dropped off a balcony when... Who the fuck is he? So anyway, once the battle really gets heated, Magneto starts... Wait, let me get this straight. You actually sent waves and waves of your own men to their deaths before you threw flaming cars at these people. Who the fuck wrote this garbage? It's not like the humans were gonna scale up in this war. All they have is their anti-mutant guns. He could have just sat outside their range and shelled them with flaming cars the whole time. What did he send the mutants for? So a bunch of people die and get hurt for no reason until Magneto gets anti-mutanted. Then for some reason this pisses Jean off, so finally she gets off her ass and does something. And boy howdy is everyone screwed. Oh, but Logan has an idea as he approaches her with loving eyes and... You're kidding. He just kills her. Let's just try to take a minute to determine what the purpose of any of this was. I had said that Charles said something to Jean before he died. Well, here's what it was.
Don't let it control you.
This indicates that one of the things Jean is going to have to do is actually try to control this. This whole film could have been spent with Jean trying to settle the best and worst parts of herself, to respect the professor's wishes and bring the Phoenix in line. And it could have been her love for Logan that helped her to do so, allowing the better, more human part of her to win over the monster. But no, he just kills her. No words about Jean's struggle, no internal conflicts being resolved. Jean was given almost omnipotent superpowers, and then she just died. Movie, I don't know what you're for. Everyone gets back to X-Men school where they decide to keep it open, Rogue got the cure, who cares, and blah 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 blah. Really, the only thing that actually pissed me off about this film was the bullshit action climax that made no sense, and that stupid goddamn kid with the wings. Who was he? Why was he in the opening? He didn't do anything. Other than that, the film just disappoints me with all of its untapped potential. It was called The Last Stand, but there were a few things in here that were supposed to be setting it up for a possible sequel. What a joke. They managed to squeeze out a pretty decent prequel after this, but never again will we see the original cast in the original franchise. Let's hope to God it stays that way.